predictions. Check out these MLB Wildcard predictions. Don't you dare even think about missing any Wildcard predictions.
Hi, this is Sean again from Broadsword Media. Welcome to my Major League Baseball Wildcard Game predictions. First we have the Baltimore Orioles going against the Toronto Blue Jays. The starting pitchers scheduled for that game are Chris Tillman and Marcus Stroman. Chris Tillman is the number one man in the Orioles rotation. Probably a good idea because when you look at the team ERAs, theirs is way inferior to the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays brought out Marcus Stroman, and he's a fairly good pitcher, but he's no number one starter. He's like the fourth man on the rotation. So just with that alone, the O's already have the advantage because they got their best pitcher out there, and the Blue Jays have their fourth best starting pitcher out there. But it could still be a pretty close matchup. They both are very good teams and deserve to be here. The Baltimore Orioles have a much better team batting average than the Toronto Blue Jays, in the top 15. The Blue Jays, their team batting average is in the bottom 10, but they are both very powerful teams. The O's have the most home runs by a pretty good amount, actually, and the Blue Jays are fourth place in home runs. Now, while the Blue Jays are in the bottom 10 in team batting average, their total runs scored is actually pretty solid, and same with the O's. Don't expect very much base stealing between these two teams. The Blue Jays are 25th in stolen bases. The Orioles are in dead last in stolen bases with only 19 stolen bases for this entire 162 game season. 19. I've never heard of numbers that low before. The Orioles have great players that have been there for a long time, or just a few years. They got Chris Davis, who always hits a lot of home runs. They got Adam Jones, who on a regular basis usually hits a lot of home runs. He's kind of in the middle in batting average, but good enough. Chris Davis kind of struggles with batting average to an extent, but he makes up for it with a lot of power. And Mark Trumbo, on his first year with the Orioles, has led the entire league in home runs, so this is a powerful team. And more than makes up for their lack of stolen bases. The Blue Jays, of course, have a lot of great players in their lineup, just like the Orioles do. Jose Bautista, they got Josh Donaldson from my A's, they got Troy Tulowitzki, and quite a few others. Speaking of former A's that are in the playoffs for other teams, in just this wild card round, there's actually quite a few of them in both games. The Orioles have the early advantage with their best starting pitcher, Chris Tillman, out there. He's a really solid starting pitcher. He is probably in the top 10 in Cy Young voting. I don't think he's going to win it, but he's really solid. And they have a huge advantage right from the get-go. But if the Blue Jays can hold their own, even with Marcus Stroman, they'll have an advantage later on because their team ERA is much higher than the O's, which actually kind of tells me that their bullpen's definitely better. So while I did point out that the Blue Jays have a much better team ERA than the Baltimore Orioles, the Orioles do have an ace in the hole, though. In the final innings, if they're ahead, I guarantee you the Orioles will win, because they have the best closer in the league. His name is Zach Britton. His ERA is 0.54, which is incredible, and out of 47 save opportunities, he succeeded at closing all 47 of them. That's perfection right there. Now, I'm not denying the Blue Jays closer, Roberto Osuna. He's a very good closer himself. He's closed 36 out of 42 opportunities, so only 6 blown saves. But comparing that to 0, that's actually kind of a lot. In the early going, the Orioles have the advantage. They got the most power in their lineup, they have the stronger offense as they have a much better team batting average, and they're putting their best pitcher in there. So that's going to make it hard for the Blue Jays to even score. However, if Marcus Stroman can hold his own against Chris Tillman, then the Blue Jays could have an advantage mid-game since they have a better team ERA and a better bullpen. But if the O's better offense overcomes those, then the Orioles are going to win. No doubt about it. Once it gets to the ninth inning and they're ahead, they're not going to lose. Their closer is perfect. He's never failed to close a saving opportunity. I think it's going to be the Orioles, and it will be a relatively high-scoring game. Maybe like, you know, the team that wins will score like 5 to 7 runs or something. But yeah, it's going to be the Orioles. And next we have the National League Wildcard Game. This is between the San Francisco Giants and the New York Mets. This is going to be a pretty interesting matchup. The two starting pitchers are both pretty close to even. I'd give the slight edge to the Mets starting pitcher, Noah Syndergaard. The Giants starting pitcher, Madison Bumgarner, is quite good himself. This should be a pretty low-scoring game. The Giants are in 19th in runs scored, and the Mets are in 25th in runs scored. The Giants, however, are 11th in team batting average, with the Mets all the way down in 25th. Out of the 4 teams that are in the wild card games, the Giants are probably the only team you should expect to see go for stolen bases, because they're 14th. But just like the American League teams that are there, the Mets are way down in the bottom 10 in stolen bases. In fact, they're actually in the bottom 3 in 28th. Not likely to be much power in this matchup. While the Mets are 5th in team home runs, the Giants are only 28th in that category. The Giants, they've been winning by getting on base more consistently, hitting balls in play and getting on base, and, you know, stealing bases and scoring runs the old-fashioned way. Mets, on the other hand, depended a lot more on home runs, but they could still, you know, hold their own. Both these teams have amazing ERAs. The Mets are in 3rd, and the Giants are in 4th, only behind by .07. So they're basically almost dead even on team ERA. So this is definitely going to be a pitcher's matchup. But the starting pitchers, expect them to do pretty well, and then the bullpen, expect them to do pretty well also. If the Mets get the lead late in the game, they should very likely win it. If the Giants do, I mean, of course they should win it too, but the odds are not as in their favor in that regard. I respect Santiago Casilla. He was a great closer, and he did pretty good on my Oakland A's as well. He wasn't a closer there, but he was pretty good there too. But he's been a pretty respectable closer for the Giants, but he just doesn't compare to the Mets closer. The Mets closer, in 56 save opportunities, he saved 51, so he only missed 5. He also has an impressive ERA of 2.55. I'm probably going to pronounce his name wrong. Juris Familia. I am pretty certain I pronounced it wrong. Sorry, I don't mean to offend the Mets fans or anyone else not familiar with him, but I looked him up and he's a really solid closer. Santiago Casilla, on the other hand, has a 3.57 ERA, which for a closer is actually not that good. And in his save opportunities, he had 40 save opportunities and saved 31 of them. He actually had 9 blown saves. Now, that doesn't sound too alarming, but when you compare it to 5 for his opponent, 6 for the Blue Jays closer, and no blown saves at all for the Orioles closer, that can be kind of alarming, actually. I really think this game between the Mets and the Giants has a much greater chance of being a much closer game than the Orioles and Blue Jays. I mean, with that one, I think the Orioles will either beat them pretty badly or it'll be a close win. With this one, it's a lot closer and a little bit harder to predict. I mean, unlike the American League Wildcard Game, in this National League Wildcard Game, both teams put out very prominent starting pitchers. So it could end up being low scoring right from the get-go. And they both have great team ERAs in the top 4. So it's going to be a very close pitchers matchup, most likely. But the Mets they are 5th in home runs. They've hit a lot of home runs, so there is that chance. But the other thing is, pitchers can take advantage of those aggressive power hitters and make them swing at bad pitches and kind of can screw them up. The Giants, on the other hand, while they're not very powerful, they're only 28th in home runs, they're a lot more consistent at getting on base, as they're 11th in team batting average. So I'd say the advantage, just because of that, because their batting average is that much better than their opponent, they have a much greater shot at getting on base. So for this one, I am predicting the Giants to win. But they're going to have to make sure to make it easy for their closer, because I'm going to be honest, his numbers, I mean, they look great, but for a closer, especially in the playoffs, they're not the kind of numbers you want. Especially when you compare to the other closers in this wild card round. So, slight edge to the Giants. It's going to be really close. As for the American League one, I think it's an edge to the Orioles. The Blue Jays could definitely win it, but I'm definitely giving it to the Orioles. I'm actually pretty confident in that. But the National League one, it's going to be a lot closer. It could definitely go either way. I could very well see the Mets win this, but I'm giving it to the Giants. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay tuned for our upcoming Division Series playoff predictions. And please like, comment, and subscribe, and spread the word. Let everyone you know and love know about this channel, and tell them about my playoff predictions and everything else you love about this channel. Let's keep this channel growing. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching.